tore my ACL, got into some trouble, got kicked out for a year. Now I'm back at my mom's house. Now I'm supposed to be an athlete, but I'm back at my mom's house. So I start going around in the black market, playing around in the streets, doing security, doing all the party and all the fun things. One time, I hit another trigger point, and I got my butt whooped. And I said, I don't belong out here. And I went back to school. So when I went back to Augsburg, played there 4 years, graduated All-American, tried to go play pro, broke my ankle. Now sports are gone. Who are you after that? A lot of athletes go through this. When you put everything into sports, especially if it's covering up for something that you're lacking, whether it be your masculinity, whether it be your acceptance, whether it be, oh, my dad wasn't there, or my mom wasn't there, I grew up in a freaking food desert, or, I was poverty, whatever you want to try to justify all your excuses for, if we buried it under sports, once the sports is gone, a lot of athletes go off the deep end. And this is a very common thing. So as I did that, got caught up in the system, I had to eventually choose myself. And that was one day in solitude. No phone, no pen, no pad, no nothing. And I finally invested into personal development, growth and discovery. And so through my journey of pulling myself out of that whole situation, I created these systems, the foundation. I created the Choose Yourself process. Now I have an accountability group. Now everything I've done to pull myself from these breaking points and these dark places, I provide in the structure and a creative format for others. And with that comes strengthening my spirituality and understanding my boundaries and my capacity and what investments to take and what choices. Because when you start to identify the version you're supposed to be, then the fake world doesn't align with every single thing, because you're not trying to satisfy people no more. You're trying to attract instead of chase. And so, after that, my uncle, CEO of Revel Spirits, shout out Revel Spirits, Pierce the Agave on the planet. He reached out to me like, hey, you want to do sales in Minnesota? This was after I had been 18 months sober. In the dark place, I was dealing with addiction to all kinds of things. When 18 months sober, went deep into personal development and acceptance, accountability. Can't blame nobody. Can't blame the judge. You can't blame the doctor. You can't blame your parents. You can't blame your injuries. You can't blame God. You can't blame nobody. You better choose yourself. Otherwise, you can't change nothing. And then I crushed it. Initially I was messing up for Revel Spirits, and Michael was like, hey, you better switch. We'll let you go. And I was like, oh, I heard that before a bunch of times. This is my last shot, because without this, with my background and all the restrictions on me, I have to figure out a way to make this work. So I had to start waking up at 9 a.m. instead of 2. So I have a whole exercise and process for us who want to start waking up early. Then I started prioritizing my nighttime routine and my sleep. Then I started researching, and then I started to grow on Instagram, and I started to grow online. And now I've created communities, and we do retreats, and wrote my book eventually once I was comfortable with my story. And that's the power of embracing your stories. You're able to really be true and speak in your truth because you went through it, instead of speaking in some type of character or avatar that you think you need to be for other people. So, then, eventually we blew up, moved to New York City, and Choose Yourself was born. And I really was like, do I want to go on the party scene in New York City, or do I want to go to sleep at 8 and wake up at 3? And I chose the latter. And that was the biggest decision I could have ever made, because a lot of temptation out here, y'all. A lot of temptation, but it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place, man. But they don't got the smell on the pictures. So that's Choose Yourself was born. And now, I'm traveling, talking about my book, talking about the Choose Yourself process on stages, and continuing to develop different resources, man. I want to create more books. This might be a 12-book series. In my head, it's 12 books, okay. So it's only 88 pages. And if you're ready to face, everything you've been hiding, this is the one for you, man. I use my story to help you embrace yours.
That's amazing, Hakeem. What a wonderful and inspiring story. And I'm going to put the cover of the book up and have you talk more about that. Let me do that right now. And for those who are listening, watching on radio with their mind's eye, I can describe, or you can describe the cover. It's on now. The book is a beautiful cover. It's describe it. What's this cover mean? Choose yourself to be chosen. And there is graphics there, but let me have you describe what you are presenting, and I'll describe what I see when we're done with that.
Yeah. Choose yourself to be chosen, GYM, and that's grow your mind with inner size. And that's
Okay.
what the GYM, because you can do inner size.
Exercise versus exercise.
Exactly. But you can exercise at the gym, but you can inner size if you GYM. And that's grow your mind. So that's the term that I utilize. But the stars represent how small we are.
Mm-hmm.
The heart represents that we are all connected internally. If we go beneath the expectation, societal construct, and everything we were conditioned to be, we're born in our pure self, and whatever God created us to be, we're born as that. And then all of a sudden we get a name, we get a language, we get where we're supposed to go. We're supposed to go to school. We're supposed to do all this. And then eventually we got to come back to that purity, come back to our heart. Now the mind and the heart are split because the mind is what you utilize to identify your experience and if it's in alignment with your heart. So that disconnection between the heart space and the mind space, for a lot of us, it causes us to go into depression because we don't know what we're doing, why we're doing, where we're going, because we haven't gone within and made that connection. So that's why it's half and half heart, half mind, 100% you. The roads are split. One splits to me, one splits to the key, and the key is you.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm talking to my nephew Hakeem born McFarlane. And we're talking about his book, Choose Yourself. And I'm showing that on our live stream to those who are listening on radio. Choose Yourself to be Chosen. Hakeem is a dynamic public speaker. He's dedicated to representing the idea of the Choose Yourself movement on a global stage. We're talking about that right now. He says his mission is to inspire individuals to prioritize their well-being and personal growth while equipping them with the tools to face challenges with resilience and confidence. He says through engaging and thought-provoking presentations, he's able to encourage audiences to cultivate healthy habits, to embrace positivity, and to recognize the transformative power of laughter, because a positive mindset begins when you learn to find the joy in life's moments. What a powerful and wonderful statement, Hakeem. You've got a book signing coming up here in Minneapolis fairly soon. Let's invite people to know about that and to show up and to support you and to learn and join the movement.
Yeah. Come on out, y'all. I'm going to do a little quick speech, but it's not about me. It's more about us connecting with other people who are in that space and who have the desire to want to engage in their store, and with people who want to bring the strength and joy to each other. It's the celebration of the growth, man. The journey is subjective. The destiny is objective. You just got to be most selective with your perspective. And it starts with our ability to understand who we are. And then we provide that version to others, which validates being authentic. So it's in Northeast Minneapolis. It's at I can list off the address right here. It's in Northeast Minneapolis, but I'm from Minneapolis, so I wanted to do my first book launch back home. So from the Mini Apple to the Big Apple, y'all, we here. That's what I like to say. The address is 1121 Jackson Street Northeast, Suite 145. You got my boy DJ Ray Mills coming in, sponsored by Revel Spirits, Inside News. We're doing book signings. We'll have a backdrop for pictures. So please come by and support, bring your family, bring your friends. And it's from 6 to 8 on May 10th.
Okay. We were supposed to have another wonderful audience artist joining us here, Champion Fulton. And maybe she lost the link in the course of the program. Maybe she'll come back on in a few minutes to be part of the program. But in the meantime, I'm going to bring another guest in, one of my friends from generations, it seems, friends forever, an elder, a leader, a visionary, a pioneer, a community builder, Reverend Alfred Babington-Johnson. We always call him Babington. And let me say that up to a few minutes ago, I was listening to the Senate subcommittee on ethics, and Babington was there. The background for this conversation is a letter that Babington crafted that we'll be presenting in Insight News next week, but it's the beginning of a series of stories looking at challenges leadership in our community always faces. As we move forward, we are assaulted by adversaries that don't have our interest. And at one point, in time, we have to recognize the pattern and show the power of bringing our voice, our analysis, our understanding, and the solutions that we are making to build community. Let me bring Babington in. Brother Babington, how you doing?
I'm doing nicely, Al. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Hakeem, just hang out with me. You're going to be just riding with me for the hour, okay?
All right. Now, hey, Alfred. Nice to
Hey,
meet
Let me
you.
introduce you. Call him Babington.
Bobbington.
Babington.
Good to meet you.
Babington. There we go.
Babington.
You were born a McFarlane, huh?
Yes, sir.
Here we
Yes,
go.
sir. From the womb to the tomb.
Babington, you got a letter. You wrote a letter that we're going to be publishing in Insight News in the next couple of weeks. But I want you to read that letter, first of all. And you can start by giving a little context, read the letter, and let's have a discussion about what's at stake. I watched the hearing of the Ethics Subcommittee of the Senate a few minutes ago. And I have to say, as always, and once again, I'm totally impressed by the power, the clarity, the conviction of our representative, Senator Bobby Joe Champion. I think he represented us and our issues well. And I want to talk about that. So, Babington, set it up. What's the context?
Okay, thanks so much, Al. The context, I think, appropriately is we have a young man of our community, grew up here, immersed himself in all the most positive activities thereof, and at some point turned to public call, a call to be an elected official. He was elected in the Senate to the House of Representatives. Subsequently, he then was elected to the Senate. After that, he was chosen to be a leader in the Senate and really sits as perhaps the third most powerful person in the government. In other words, if the governor and the lieutenant governor were in some reason to not be available for service, his position as president of the Senate would elevate him into that position. So he's a very powerful position for an African American. Because he always seeks to do those things that are most important for us, ended up coming under attack. And as the letter may demonstrate, perhaps I'll just read the letter and then come back to the dialogue. So this is a letter, beloved community. Mm-hmm. We just emerged from a difficult period. A policeman was videotaped crushing the life out of George Floyd while fellow officers stood by. We experienced this gut punch parallel to the unfolding of a pandemic that resulted in hundreds of thousands dying from COVID-19. Against this backdrop, we experienced a moment when a spirit of compassion and determination to address untreated wrongs emerged. The pendulum of community consciousness has now swung in a new and a dangerous direction. Lies, distortions, and grotesque political manipulations dominate our times. We are in a struggle, but we will push through to the other side of this midnight if we find our voices and stand against the darkness. In that spirit, I must express my outrage at the vilification faced by an African-American community hero. A public servant and a source of pride is now being attacked for the very characteristics that led his village to consider him heroic. Bobby Joe Champion, born on the north side of Minneapolis, completed his education at Macalester College and earned a Juris Doctorate from William Mitchell. He worked with local legends such as Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam, enjoying a successful private career before he felt a call to public service. After 2 terms as a state representative, he was elected to the Senate, where his colleagues deemed him a leader deserving of elevation, ultimately, to president of the Senate. This is an elected official addressing issues and processes to ensure the government acts as an ally to the people. He also dedicates time and energy as a volunteer in community events, such as being a pro bono lawyer for individuals and agencies, and as a mentor and friend to those in need. Now, he's unjustly attacked for his efforts to serve the community by those who see a moment of political advantage and exploitation. A recent headline, which we in the community know to be false and biased illustrates the point. The headline: DFL Senate president steered millions in public funds to a legal client. This is an inflammatory misrepresentation that arises during a critical season when approaches to addressing the violence of our time are being discussed. Bobby Joe Champion, Esquire, is a highly respected legal practitioner. He generously provides counsel and pro bono services to individuals and organizations in our village and beyond. His efforts have benefited the entire state of Minnesota, enabling often overlooked segments of society to better fulfill their missions. As the senator works to provide resources for their good works. I've known Senator Champion for over 40 years. He's a man of integrity and a servant dedicated to empowering those often left on the margins. Contrary to the facts, some reporters, unwilling to be objective conveyors of information and seekers of truth, produced the misleading headline mentioned earlier. Too many of our inner city neighborhoods are plagued by violence and drug trafficking, diminishing the quality of life. Within the African American community, the understanding that solutions cannot be expected to originate from outside to address our village crises has led to an important indigenous response. 21 Days of Peace. This intentional effort aims to rebuild relationships between the community and the police. Led by Reverend Jerry McAfee, this initiative has received praise from both the police and affected neighborhoods. It has proven effective in building new bridges with law enforcement and empowering neighborhoods to reclaim their spaces. Unfortunately, personality clashes between the program leadership and certain city council members in Minneapolis escalated, overshadowing the essential community service being offered. Senator Champion, determined to preserve the critical progress made in the community he was elected to serve, sought to refocus the discussion on effective service rather than on personal conflicts. What has followed is a press eager to sensational headlines and politicians looking for an opportunity to disrupt. We need better. Senator Champion has lived in the north side of Minneapolis his entire life. Isn't it a cause for celebration that he's built strong relationships with the people, agencies, and churches in his electorate? Shouldn't we celebrate this volunteer commitment and the fact that he possesses firsthand information about effective providers of services to his constituents? Would we criticize former President Carter for working hand in hand with Habitat for Humanity and then finding opportunities to bring financial support to their admirable work? Many decades ago, before holding any office, Bobby Joe Champion participated in the Stairstep Foundation's community building initiatives. We recognize his intelligence, energy, and dedication to service, which forged a genuine bond between us. Although Stairstep has not employed him for nearly 20 years, we continue to share a passion for achieving positive results for everyone. He became aware of our sincere commitment and ability to deliver beneficial outcomes for our community. As he has progressed in his public service, we've seen him actively champion the Latino Chamber of Commerce, the Hmong American Partnership, Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation, the Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation Board, the African Development Center, and others. I'm sure we are all appreciative of his commitment to service and that he considers our activities worthy of his support. I know he expects us all to deliver for the citizens of our state. I value his service and his integrity. We must return to the spirit of truth, compassion, and commitment to service that emerged after George Floyd, allowing our legislators then to focus on constructive outcomes rather than partisan politics. Thank you, Senator Champion, for being a model of the public servant that we need. That was the letter to the community I submitted to our brother, Al McFarlane. You're muted, Al.
Thank you, Babington. Thank you for reading that, for sharing that. And we'll be running that letter and a report on what happened today in the next week's edition of Insight News. But talk about today. You just left, and I watched online the YouTube presentation of the hearing. What was that about?
So, Al, thank you so much, because what prompted this letter and what has created this flurry is, again, as I mentioned, there was a difference of opinion, a clash of personalities between Reverend McAfee, the developer of 21 Days of Peace and the executor of it, and members of the city council, which flared into YouTube pronouncements and Facebook posts. And parallel to that, Senator Champion had sought to provide more resources to have 21 Days of Peace continue. The timing of the conflicts in personality and other events that happened in the city and the opportunity to get state support clashed. And as they clashed, as I mentioned, certain politicians and certain news agencies, news in quotation, sought to raise a notion, that headline, that the senator steered millions of dollars to a legal client, referring to some work that he had done for Salem Inc. and Reverend McAfee back in 2022, which he did on a pro bono basis about some real estate matters. When this conflict occurred between Reverend McAfee and some of the city council members, it created an environment which some folks sought an opportunity to make the personality conflict the issue. And so when Senator Champion was putting forward the bill to provide some resources for 21 Days of Peace, which was doing some good work in mitigation of violence and stopping some drug activities, it was mischaracterized by some members of the press to say that he had steered and was steering dollars to a legal client. First of all, it wasn't a legal client. Secondly, there's no such thing as steering dollars for any legislator. What the legislative process is that you introduce an idea. The idea might be to affect this issue of violence and the drugs. We have violence interrupters and folks working that issue. That is worthwhile to support. And instead, it was colorized as if he were steering funds. He introduced the legislation. It then goes to committee after committee after committee. It has to be defended at every level. It then, if it passes through the Senate, it then has to go to a conference committee where the House of Representatives has to look into the matter and consider whether or not it's worthy of support or not, what have you. And in the process of doing that, some of the Republican opposition and press who were looking for headlines mischaracterized this event and caused it to seem as if Senator Champion had made some ethical violation when he's serving his community. That led to him taking the wise step that was afforded to him in the process of asking the ethics committee, which he served as chair of. Temporarily, he stepped down from his position as chair of the ethics committee and asked the ethics committee to review this situation to see if, in fact, there had been any conflict of interest. And what you saw today, Al, was the initial process of that, in which it was clear by what he presented that there was no conflict. There was no financial involvement. Something that happened 3 years ago being had to do with the real estate foreclosure issues was now being brought over here where there's a community needing intervention and mitigation against drugs and mischaracterizing his efforts in this regard.
So what do we do? I mean, the thing is, this is not new to us, Babington. This happens all the time. When, let me take this far, far out. Far out for me is to say, when attacks like this come, they remind me of Black Wall Street. They remind me of Rosewood. They remind me of the expectation that whenever our people emerge with genius solutions, and genius solutions means common sense.
Yes.
Common sense approaches and the ability to step forward and to bring and seek resources from our community to create solutions in our community, solutions that help the broader community, right, become the best it can be. But as our voices emerge, as our institutions emerge, there is a willingness of adversarial interest to attempt to destroy, mischaracterize, immobilize, and to keep our people in a position of permanent malaise.
Disadvantage.
We get the we get the poverty. You know, they get the money, and
Yes.
and they rather build prisons, right?
Yes.
To as opposed to building campuses, college campuses.
Yes.
You know, and so we're in that. That's a real far out analysis, but it
Doesn't
sounds
seem
great
far out
to
to
me.
me. Doesn't seem far out to me. And power and privilege are interesting things. You know, Al, I've started to say more and more that the issue that is central to all of our concerns now is not so much racism as it is privilege. I say that because as I look at humankind, when human beings, whatever their race, experience an advantage that they start to internalize, they then begin to try to protect that advantage, push others out of the possibility of having access to that advantage. That certainly has shown up in racism, if that's the category, but whatever the category is. So now, you said it so well, Al. Here we have, in our community, we've lived on the margins. Since slavery, we've been enforced into a marginal situation in which even the development of institutions in our community, you talk about Black Wall Street, every time it seems that African Americans start to create a foundation on which they can build prospects of a better life that makes sense, there's a pushback against that because folks think that that encroaches on their privilege, on their sense of life. And so they come against it actively. Here, we have a young man born on the north side of Minneapolis, not in elegant circumstances, with working parents, decent people, church-going folk, but he worked his way through high school, first in his family to go through college, then law school, then he gets into public service as a representative, then a senator, then to be elected president of the Senate. And I'm gonna tell you, Al, I think in some ways it feels almost like Barack Obama. You have Barack Obama coming out of nowhere. You remember, I don't know if you, on the night of his first in Grants Park, there, Oprah Winfrey and Jesse Jackson and thousands of people were there celebrating as this family came forward, and there were tears in people's eyes. And folks said, we never thought this could happen. A Black man become president of the United States. And then he won a second time. And we thought, okay, it's on now. We're through with the foolishness. And then we see there's a pendulum.
Donald Trump.
Yeah. I mean, it's unimaginable, the extreme that he represents from the advance that we thought we had. So bringing that just to this point, here we have a Black man out of North Minneapolis who becomes president of the Minnesota Senate. Is it possible that he could just be allowed to just do good work? Is that possible? Clearly not. The issue of struggle for primacy and power has emerged here, I think, Al.
Well, you know, and it's not new. And so here the solution side, Babington, is also not new. We simply have to remember, I believe, just as our people, through resiliency, through faith, through hard work, and through, you know, the divine intention, we emerged through enslavement. We emerged and moved towards the movement towards the beautiful society during Reconstruction. And that flourishing was so magnificent, so prolific, so fast, that it caused a terrible reaction. Jim Crow, the rise of the Klan and the reemergence of this evil that we can only call white supremacist thought. We survived that. The civil rights movement, a next push, and a retraction.
A retraction.
Here we go again. And as Brother Mahmoud El-Khadi would say, the protestations of the MAGA right, of the people that are saying today's iteration of segregation now, segregation forever. That's what they're saying in their effort to dismantle all the institutions, all the language, all the libraries, all the schools, all the health programs, all the feeding of people, all of the systems that we helped clarify the need for and demonstrate the possibility of bringing humanity more broadly into the world and our community to serve everybody, not just us, but us being served too. Us being served too. And as we have done that, here we have the same reaction. So Mahmoud would say, when they say never, 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 or they call that now, we're going to make America great again, return to that old date. It means that they're on their last leg.
Absolutely.
It's a dying gasp. We should take heart.
Amen.
And we should be clear and understand, the voice, the energy of our young people that will take this further than we have. You and I, we're pioneers, right? But the ones behind us, oh boy.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Amen. You talked about Mahmoud. He defines racism as prejudice plus power. The issue of us understanding more, we are a romantic people, I think, historically, Al. So we love noble concepts. When the United States of America is a wonderful idea. All men are created equal. That they are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Woo! That's the deal, isn't it? And nobody buys that more than Black folk. Black folks say, yes, that's the way it's supposed to be. Regrettably, we get caught holding the idea, as you said earlier, and other folk running down the road with the privilege. Without a sense of the fact that there ought to be some egalitarian thing. There ought to be some equity thing. There ought to be some inclusive thing. We embrace it. And so we come face to face with the fact that there's a certain Pollyanna to thinking that the good ideas will just emerge on their own. That's not quite how it works. So we too have to, at least at some level, understand the power equation. And so, and that's where these threats come. When all of a sudden we are seemingly part of the power equation, that's a threat. But we ought to recognize that. And that's why more than ever, this is where we must lift our voices. This is where we must protect those who are doing what you're supposed to do, like Bobby Joe. He's serving the people. And he's being attacked because he seems vulnerable, not because he did anything wrong. Because the Star Tribune, they ran an article around this, and they're lifting up all these innuendos. And at the end of the article, they say, not as if he did anything wrong. Is that what you call burying the lead?
That's it. That's it. Yeah. And that's how they do it.
That's how they do.
That's how they do it. So we have to just be wise. Let me bring my nephew back in and hang out with me, because you and I talking, we both been around a long time, but here's a young person that's moving.
You've been around longer than me.
I have. I think I'm your elder by
I'm not sure.
a day or two. I don't know. I might be. I might not be. Hakeem Babington invited me to go to Ghana back in, I think, 1994.
93, yeah.
It was 93, 94, yeah. And when I got there in the airport, we saw Gary Hines and the Sounds of Blackness leaving, crossed them in the airport. It was amazing. And the banner of this festival that we weren't exactly a part of, but we caught a part of it. called Panifest. It was Panifest 94 or 93, but the tagline for the festival was the re-emergence of African civilization.
Hallelujah.
And Babington just talked about big ideas, and that was a big idea, the re-emergence of African civilization. And to make that statement, particularly in a global environment that denigrates everything African, that denigrates everything Black, that makes the world believe that Africa has no value and produces nothing, for the Africans to say, we are the center of the universe. Amen. And we declare our intention to present the reemergence of the original civilization of African civilization. A powerful idea. And I've gone to Ghana several times since that time, but his invitation set the stage for my involvement in Ghana. And I've worked with him with community building in Minnesota for years and years. Amen. Over a variety of projects. So I wanted two things to happen in this conversation. One is, Babington, you heard some of what Hakeem was saying when you got on. Any impressions, thoughts? And Hakeem, you've heard two elders, Alan and Babington, talk about a crisis at this moment. And as a young man, how do you hear? How do you look at, and how does that fit into how you determine your navigation? And your navigation reflecting that theme. Choose yourself to be chosen. What do you think?
Yeah, man. I mean, it all starts with yourself, your understanding of yourself. And if we're going to look at external variables, experiences, the past, and everything to try to be something right now, we're always going to be a resemblance of what the past was. Now, in order to be our future version, we have to take some form of imagination of what we want this world to be. What type of people do we want in this world? And we start with ourselves by being that person. So that starts with filtering what you listen to, the people around you, what you eat. Are you exercising? Are you sleeping? Are you stretching? Are you even investing in yourself so you can be emotionally aware and have a capacity for stress? Because you see what's going on in the world. Can you think clearly under pressure? Have you done the work to prepare yourself for what is to come? And there's a lot of disadvantages for being a minority due to housing and where we grew up and what the restrictions are in the system. Like I had to deal with being a felon for 11 years for one punch, and it restricted my growth and my ability to get a job and my ability to find housing. And so what did I have to do? I got lost first and I started blaming, complaining, and I played the victim. And then I took accountability and I started taking action for the things that I can do right now. And that is developing my faith in us as a humanity, our creator, and doing things that I know make me feel fulfilled so I can align with my people, no matter what they look like. The similarities are what we should be focused on. And I talk about this with religion and spirituality as well. Like you got all these different types of text, but there's a text. That's the beauty. We got all these different labels of prophets and creators, but we all believe in a higher power. And so I think a lot of times with social media, especially with the kids right now, the way that they bombard us based off of what they want us to think is getting very dangerous. And so being able to filter your feed and what you listen to, because people are taking that stuff into school and treating people and shooting places up off of stuff they see online. And I think, technology has a huge impact on how this next generation is going to really follow up on this. And we can use it to our advantage. We can use it to our advantage if we use it properly. It's a great tool. They have all these things to help us create and research and connect with people across the world in split second, which we couldn't do back in the day. Even when I was younger, we had flip phones, and so having the technology at our fingertips, find a way to use that to really do the research and find out what we have individually, and then give back to a purpose or your passion with your gift. And that's different for everybody, so.
Jump in, Babington. Go ahead.
So Hakeem, I find this picture interesting that I'm looking upon. Now, this picture.
And you have to describe it for the radio audience.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So there's a picture behind me that's of 3 Ghanaian fishermen mending their nets. They're all working together, mending the nets. And this Katana Day did this, Al. Katana Day did it because when I took her to Ghana, she saw this captured. I'm looking over Al's shoulder, and I'm seeing the African woman with the basket on her head, and then further down, I'm seeing more of that. I mean, and if I were able to shift the focus of our thing a little more, you could see behind me some stuff also that has some similarities to all the images that Al has behind his desk. Okay, then I'm looking behind you, Hakeem, and I'm seeing what I think is a certain kind of generational issue. Choose yourself, grow your mind. I can't see quite all the others, okay? But your dialogue, and then of course the picture that you have, which is much more expressive of the ideas, with the heart and the different roles, whatever. But so Al and I are of the same generation in our community and predisposed to some of the same general thematic ideas as we walk through life, right? But we are of another generation. And here you are, and a very, very thoughtful fellow for sure, concerned about spiritual issues, but you're in a different context. You grew up in it. You even kind of spoke dismissively of flip phones. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. Yep.
The notion is things have changed, right? Things have changed. And so I don't know if in some way, I don't want to speak for Al. I don't know if some way we are looking back in a different way than you are looking back, but we're both looking back and we're looking forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think your generation has new challenges. This stuff, these are guys fishing. This is a woman wearing walking through the village with the stuff, right? Your stuff looks electric, it looks technological, you know what I mean? And so, but wherever we are, we've got to fight through to the common values and commitments that allow us to both embrace life and help others embrace life, which is much of what you talked about. About inner size and which is some critical stuff. But I think somehow or other we have to also identify this generational thing and find the way to close the connectivity and feed in some ways one another in life-giving ways. I don't know, Al, if there's a strain there for you.
Well, there is. And my sense is that where we are, and I like the concept of inner size, going within. I think the path ahead is the path within. And what we are preparing to do as a people globally is determine that the answers that are needed are the answers that are within us.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to figure out ways to go inside, to do the inner size, to make our inside mind, spirit, body healthy. And I believe we are doing that. And as we do that, the entire world would change because we are discovering how to become ourselves in a way that allows us to break through the artificial barriers, boundaries, misconceptions, misinformation, disinformation, the control that the external world seeks to use to corral and to rob us of our gift, our energy, our labor, our land, our resources. And, I'm excited right now, Babington, about watching what's happening with Captain Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso. I don't know if you've been watching that boat. Okay, well, there's a movement of people Hakeem's age around the planet that are saying that we don't have to get approval from France or from Germany or from England, and that we have a right and an obligation and a duty to look at the resources that we're standing on top of and the resources that are in our mind, in our creativity, and to develop those right here. And that what we approve, having gone to understanding our own value differently, we are going to transform country, society, and the planet. That's where I'm at. So
let me just pop something and then let Hakeem. So the thing, one of the things that I'm thinking is different generationally. Al mentioned the term, and it's heartland for me. The term is community. And I think we are being led to more and more insular places. We're led to more and more isolated places by the weight of technology and all kinds of things, right? And so I think there's a generational challenge, Hakeem, to not get lost inside, not get lost, go inside, but not get lost inside, and recognize the absolute power of the connectivity that we have to be intentional about, I think.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I got the CYC. That's the Choose Yourself community. It's a membership. We meet every week on Zoom to make claims and hold each other
creating the community. There we go.
We got it. I mean, it's a membership, $99 a month. You want to tap in? If you get lost, you can connect with us. Okay. It's been about a year I've been doing it, and we grow. I got amazing stories and testimonials, but that's the power of community that I've come to find out now I've created for others, because I realized the integrity loop of when you make a claim to others. So not just choosing yourself, but then you got to have experiences with new things and new environments and new people, so you can see what you feel about yourself. You could tell yourself all you want in your head, but when you get under pressure, when you get on these shows, when you get around people, what you're saying, are you saying the same thing? So you have to have that community to be able to reflect and then vibrate with your authenticity so people can learn from you. Now, if we're doing what society taught us, ain't nobody learning nothing besides the past. And especially on the internet, they flooding us with instant gratification. They're flooding us with likes. They're flooding us with all this praise online when you can just be at home and post a selfie. So now there's social anxiety. People got ADHD and all kind of things. Now we can't even talk right because you can use ChatGPT to create a paragraph. So now we're all dependent on all these things. And that's why a big strategy in the Choose Yourself movement. I just did a 30-day challenge with no instant gratifications, no sugar, liquor, weed, porn, nicotine, caffeine, no gambling, no processed food, no fried food, no oils, no gluten, and fast for 1 day a week. This is how you find out where you are with your natural state. Are you dependent? Do you need coffee to get the day started? You need to hit the vape before you can talk? You need ibuprofen all day? When can you get your natural state and find out what's in there? When can you find out what the gift is without all the BS? Put your phone down on time. Go to sleep on time. Wake up on time. These are the things that allow you to see the power and discipline within. And that's how we find the gift. But we have all this static blocked up with toxins, the glyphosate in the food, the plastics in the ocean. We got carbon in the air. We got over farming. We got all these animals being killed inhumanely. And now we're eating all these toxins. And so we can't even think properly, let alone have conversations. And I think that's the difference between what you guys used to have is you had to talk. You had to talk. Now you can post and let it live. And you can go on about your day and have all these comments and these blank conversations, and people control and put their opinion out there. So definitely go within, embrace your natural state, authenticity, and grow your mind. Do your research and back up, look up the sources, man, because there's a lot of BS out there too, for sure.
What do you think, Babington?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, we're doing a little thing. I know the time is short, but we did a curriculum, a trauma mitigation curriculum we call Choosing Life in the Black Community, Achieving the Dream. And the whole idea is of that. It's regrettable that we too often get into the stop the violence, stop the stuff, which may be important, but how about reorienting that into what do you vision? How do you achieve? How do you turn on that? Which I think is consistent with some of the things you're saying. But in that curriculum, there were two kind of foundational pieces. One was the cognitive behavioral stuff. What are your triggers? All that. But the other intentionally was the power of community, you know, and the thing, Hakeem, I hear you, choose yourself community that you're building out. Thank God. And there,
I got to break it. We're out of time.
all right.
Hakeem, you get 10 seconds. Invite people to your book signing again.
Yeah, come on to Northeast, man. Tap in on all socials. Big Dream Hakeem. I got all the resources for you. May 10th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's going to be lit. Thank y'all for choosing yourself.
Amen.
Babington, thank you, Hakeem. We'll talk more. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time.
All right. God bless.
Yeah, I think we're done, but I'm not sure. Hold on.